Welcome back, everybody. It's my privilege to introduce Professor Ann Brody. Professor Brody is Professor of American Religious History and Director of the Women in Religious History program at the Harvard Divinity School, and has done a lot of work with our regional and local tribes. Ann?
Thank you so much. I just want to start by expressing gratitude on behalf of myself and my school to all of you who have come here today to help us understand our history and your history. And especially, I want to express gratitude to the Historic Preservation Department of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and especially David Whedon, who you just heard from, but I don't see at this minute, but he's wherever he is. And also to his predecessor, Ramona Peters, who has been extraordinarily generous over the last many years in helping our students at the Divinity School, and me in particular, understand our location in this region and our history. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome back to Harvard Carrie Ann Vanderhoop, a citizen of the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead at Aquinnah, and also of Haida Nation. She graduated from the Harvard Graduate School of Education in 2002, and she comes to us as our first delegate from another university who's helping us understand what other programs can provide models for what we can do here at Harvard. I think she was a great choice. Thank you, Program Committee, because she is director of the Haida Gwaii Institute at the University of British Columbia, where her specialty, her job, is exactly what we need help with most fundamentally, which is to bridge the enormous knowledge of traditional knowledge holders in tribal communities with the university structures of education, which sometimes seems a deep and wide river to cross, and she is a pioneer in making those bridges. So, Carrie Ann, the platform is yours.
Wani Matompen, Natasuis, Carrie Ann Vanderhoop, Natomas Aquinahat, Natai Aquinahat, Wana Outlage Haida Gwaii, Sungela, Kainawan, Hinudikyang, Gatsage, Gustudi, Kolagen, Outlage, Studi Ijang. My Haida name is Kinawas. The name I was given at birth is Carrie Ann Vanderhoop. I'm Ow Gittins, Masset in the Eagle clan of Haida Gwaii on my mother's side, and my father is from the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead at Aquinnah. So I'm really, really honored to be here and to speak at this important event and share this podium with so many of my family and people that are representing us in a really great way here today. So the subject of this conference is personal. I'm of mixed heritage, Indigenous, English, Irish, and African. So it kind of tells the history of these lands. And I am also, as mentioned, a graduate of the Harvard University School of Education. So I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about the Haida Gwaii Institute, and I have so much to say in such a short period of time, so I'll do my best. So I've been working with the Haida Gwaii Institute for about 7 years off and on, and with the University of British Columbia for about 10 years or so. And so I've been around and in many different roles, working mainly in curriculum development and program design, and with the focus of bringing Indigenous content, perspectives, materials, and people to and students out to the land. So I've really enjoyed that work, and it's allowed me to be home on Haida Gwaii and working with community and for community. So talk a little bit about the history and where I'm from. So this is a map of Haida Gwaii. You can see we're pretty up far north off the coast of British Columbia, and it's an archipelago. All of Haida Gwaii, from mountain top to ocean floor, is Haida territory. So Haida territory extends beyond the imposed U.S.-Canadian borders, and on the left, you see there's a map that shows the place names and where we gather our foods around the entire island. And there were Haida villages all from the northern tip where I'm from in Masset down to the southern tip there. And it's an abundance full of resources. And Haida oral history tells us that the Haida came from the sea. We're canoe people. We existed there on Haida Gwaii before the cedar trees. So the Haida Gwaii Institute started out as a community initiative. It was around the time where the Council of the Haida Nation was entering into these agreements with the federal and provincial government. And these agreements came from the Haida people protesting the unsustainable and harmful logging practices that were happening on Haida Gwaii. And they were asserting their rights and title as the true stewards of Haida Gwaii. And so what was happening was really not happening anywhere else in the world, where the governments were coming to the table with the Indigenous groups to have equal decision-making power and agreeing to disagree on who were the true owners of the land. And so this was something that community members and people from government and industry thought really needed to be shared broadly. And one of the reasons why the Haida Gwaii is so important to protect and to conserve is because of the diversity of ecosystems, the cultural values of the plants and the land and the features of the land, and because of the habitats to so many endemic and endangered species there. So it's also a place that could be a classroom for students to come and learn. And we entered into a partnership with the University of British Columbia to accredit the courses and programs that were developed in community. So the Haida Gwaii Higher Education Society was born. And the society worked out with the university that the society, which is made up of community members, representatives from the Haida Nation, they would own the courses and programs that were developed on Haida Gwaii. So we have a great community initiative that is, we've been able to develop programs in the way that we started developing programs with community. So any programs that we create, we have an MOU with the Council of the Haida Nation. We bring in our partners from community. We bring in our knowledge holders. We engage them right from the very point of where we have an idea. For example, we had a marine conservation semester that we thought would be really great there on Haida Gwaii, being an island and us being ocean people and having so much knowledge to share. And so we brought in our partners. We consulted with the community members. We consulted with representatives from the Council of Haida Nation. We brought in youth that were interested in marine biology and marine conservation and fisheries and marine biology. And we brought in elders that had the information and the history and the stories that of these places on Haida Gwaii. And we didn't stop the engagement there. We asked, what should this semester look like? What would the courses look like? Who who would be the ideal instructors for these courses, and who would be the ideal people to help create the curriculum. And when the curriculum was all created, we go back and we identify who would be great to review these curriculum from the community. And then they look and they review the curriculum. And then we enter into talking with the university about getting it approved through the powers that be and the Senate. But it's really a community-based process from the beginning. And it doesn't stop there. During the courses, the offering of the courses, we bring in community members, Haida and non-Haida. We bring in practitioners. We bring in scholars and elders to talk about their perspectives on the subject matter of the courses. And we make these programs and courses accessible to the people on Haida Gwaii. We strive to operate and uphold Haida principles and values of yagudang, respect, balance, responsibility, reciprocity. This is a big one, because we understand that education and research in our past has been very harmful. And it can be, there's a fine line of it being extractive, just the same way as the forestry industry can be extractive and the fishing industry. We want to honor the people that share their knowledge and wisdom in a good way by coming back to the community. Seeking wise counsel, that's a big one for us as well. And then everything is connected to everything else. Ginwadlawan, Gudalf, Kwagidang. And then we work, you can see our values are also listed. So all of the students that come to study with us, and we welcome students from everywhere across Canada and the world. You don't even have to be enrolled in a university or college to participate in our programs. We really like to invite people that are really truly interested in learning about Haida Gwaii, about preserving the environment, having respect for the environment. And all of the students come and they gain an in-depth knowledge of the co-management and Haida law and governance on Haida Gwaii. And these are a list of the agreements that really are the basis for a lot of our programs. And the programs at Haida Gwaii Institute also provide historical and legal context for current Indigenous issues of sovereignty, governance, and nation-to-nation relationships in Canada. So they're not just a course as part of a program. These issues are really woven through every course of the programs. And these are some of the examples, or some of the programs that we have available. We have 5 semester programs that have been developed. And we're still in the process of rebounding from the pandemic. And some of that goes back to community work, us actually going to community members and, talking about the capacity of the community to host students. We bring up about 22 students, as many as can fit on a bus, because we really get them out on the land. So, but we also host students in homes, community members' homes. There's no dormitories, no place for them to stay. So they rent rooms in people's homes. They rent cabins and shacks sometimes, but we hold them right in the community. So really the capacity in our relationship with the community is critical. I mean, we wouldn't have our programs without the community and the community's support. So we have a semester in community resilience, natural resource studies, marine conservation, social ecological change, and we have a summer session in plants, people, place. Through the pandemic, we transitioned courses online, and now we've continued to offer courses online, so you can take HDI courses just about anywhere. And we follow that same pedagogical approach. We include, the community educators coming in to speak, the knowledge holders coming in to share their knowledge. We even have virtual field trips to take people out on the land. And then we also have a professional development program the co-management of natural resources. And I just want to end to talk about all of the different ways that we work at the community. This design that you see here is a design by Skidegate artist Tyson Brown. And when we were creating these professional development courses, we wanted to offer something that's not just like a certificate of completion, but something a little bit more meaningful, something in the spirit of like a potlatch gifting, where you go to a potlatch and you witness, and then you receive a payment for witnessing. And that's not just, oh, we're handing out gifts and sharing our wealth. This is a responsibility that people have for being reminded to carry forward what they have learned into their world, to talk about what they have witnessed at the potlatch, whatever business that was, to remember. And so I worked with Tyson, and we talked about what the course was about and the topics that the students would be learning and engaged with. And he created this design, and I just want to read what his description of the design is. In this design, I've depicted an arm and hand extending from the mouth of a being in order to represent putting our words to action. The composition resembles a flower to hint at the result of this effort. Fine line hatching contributes to movement in the design and signifies progression in thought and coming to terms with history. Respecting various nations' governance and law systems will result in a more harmonious future for all. So we really do try to engage community, engage culture, engage the ways that we share knowledge in our programming. You know, the Haida have a visual language, and I think this is a great example of another way that everybody can be involved. And we really work with students to talk about reciprocity, so that what they learn when they come to Haida Gwaii, we hope will give them a sense of responsibility wherever they travel to, in whoever's homeland they are going to next. So just want to end with that. So katapatanamu, hawa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. There's a lot there for Harvard to consider as a model for what we do. I want to introduce the moderator of our next panel. Somebody I've known a while at Harvard, and he's been a fantastic contributor both to this conference and to the Harvard University Native American program. Matthew Liebman is Peabody Professor of Archaeology and Ethnology and is also the chair of the Department of Anthropology at Harvard. In addition to his many works on archaeology, he's also done collaborative research with Jemez Pueblo for over 2 decades. It's a model of respectful collaboration with a Native nation that I've learned a lot from, and that's been very inspiring. Matthew.
Thank you, Dan. People aren't here to hear from me, so I'm going to get right to introducing our 2 esteemed guests who can come on up, Linda and Tobias, thanks. Our 2 guests, Linda Coombs and Tobias Vanderhoop. Linda is a citizen of the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead-Aquina and has lived on Mashpee on Cape Cod for more than 40 years. She's an author, historian, and former program director of the Aquina Cultural Center. Her career in museum education spans nearly 5 decades, including 15 years as the associate director of the Wampanoag Indigenous Program of Plymouth Plantation, now known as the Plymouth Patuxet Museums. She's been an interpreter, an artisan, and a researcher, and has published extensively on Wampanoag history and colonization in 17th century New England, including children's books highlighting aspects of southern New England's tribal cultures. Welcome, Linda. Thanks for joining us today. And sitting next to Linda is Tobias Vanderhoop. Tobias is the former tribal chairman of the Wampanoag tribe of Gay Head, Equina. Since the 1990s, Tobias has been working for tribal administration, and in the early 90s, he had the opportunity to participate in a partnership between the Tribal Education Department and UMass Boston, working towards a bachelor's degree in community planning and management, which he earned in 2004. After receiving a call to action from tribal elder Norva Randolph in 1999, Tobias also served on the tribal council for a total of 8.5 years. After serving 2 terms as a councilman, he then came here to Harvard University, where he was accepted into the mid-career master's program in public administration. Since that time, he's gone back to work in tribal administration, and that includes assisting the tribal chief in the judiciary branch of their government as chief administrator. So welcome, Tobias. We can, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to start by asking a question that gets back to basics a little bit here. We hear the term colonialism a lot, and I think colonialism sometimes means different things to different people. So I'm going to start by asking how you would define colonization, and what you think we might miss in the big picture context for understanding colonization. And Linda, I'm going to toss that to you first.
I think we wanted to include this question because, as you heard, my background is in museum work as an interpreter, and I don't know for how many decades, we've discussed colonization or what a colony is, and the response that I got was, well, a colony is when one people leave their homeland and go to another country and they live there. And that's it. And I mean, as we've already heard earlier today, that it most certainly is not the only, it's only the first part of the sentence, or the first part of the definition. And colonization is a system. It's a system that has the intention to take over people's lands, cultures, lives, to eliminate those people if need be, to dominate them if not. And that is, the legacy of it that we are looking at today. So it has a very specific intent, and one of the manifestations of that is slavery. And there are many other things that go along with that as well.
Great, thanks. Tobias, you have thoughts?
So one of the titles that was not stated when you were introduced is mentor. And get out of my head. Because colonization is about intention, 100%. I'm going to tell you a story. There's a group of folks from across the water. They figured out that there were a bunch of resources somewhere where the land was bare. There wasn't much going on over here, supposedly. So they set out on a boat, tell people that, hey, if it's good over here, we're going to send word back to you. Come on over. They get here. They're weak. They are taken care of by the nations that are already here. And they write that letter back. And they say, hey, there's a lot over here. Come on down. We can use this place to make money. And that's the bottom line. The intention was that they were going to come here, utilize the people if they could, move them aside if they couldn't, and use the stuff. That's how I think about colonization.
Thank you. It's powerful. Yes. I did forget to mention that audience members, both at home and here, can submit questions on the Slido app. There'll be a link up on the screen in just a minute, but also in the chat of the Zoom webinar, so please do. So I wonder if we can talk a little more about, oh, right there, thanks. We can talk more about the impacts of colonization, especially in Massachusetts and southern New England. Linda, can you talk a little about what some of the impacts of colonization were on the people here?
I think I'd like to begin to answer that question by talking about some of the other aspects of colonization. And I always start with the doctrine of discovery, which, stated that Christians can go into the lands of non-Christians and take everything they have. Kill the people or not, whatever works. And it struck me that, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and all of that. And it was in 1524 that the first European explorer came into this area, which was Narragansett Bay. So it's only like 32 years later. Because I've had people say, oh, the doctrine of discovery, that applies to South America and those people. It wasn't up here. Well, 32 years later it was. So clearly somebody was thinking about it, and and what they did, like with the Pilgrims, for example, they had land patents, they had charters, which if you read those, really describe from sea to sea, every creek and inlet and port and lake and river, ant hill, molehill, rabbit warren, whatever, everything, just everything, for the advancement of their fortunes. This is the language that is in this. As Tobias said, the bottom line here is money. Because a colony is a business venture. When the Pilgrims came here, they had financial backers. Somebody had to pay for their trip. And to pay that back, they were supposed to they had 7 years to pay it back in timber and in furs. Or I can't remember if there's anything else on that list. I just remember that they did not fulfill their obligation. But their passports weren't reneged behind that, were they?
Missed that opportunity.
But disease is another one, the Great Dying, which is the plague of 1616 that swept from southern Maine down here, kind of hit Patuxent, or what's now Plymouth, and went inland to Narragansett Bay. Wampanoag people, which is one of several native nations that were affected, we lost 75 to 90% of our entire population. And so I sometimes think that we have representatives here today from Mashpee, Aquinnah, and Herring Pond Wampanoag tribes, and I think that we're sitting here today because that plague did go to Narragansett Bay and didn't go further south. Something that we have not been able to recover from yet. And as soon as the plague was over, we had the Pilgrims coming in and settling. So we never had the opportunity to really recuperate in our own fashion as we would have. And by 1630, that's when Boston was settled and thousands of people were coming by the shipload. We were dying of further epidemics that happened throughout the century. And as David had mentioned earlier, we were just overrun. Christianity. That was done to, it was a weapon of colonization. And in 1727, a man named Experience Mayhew wrote a book called Indian Converts, which is just his reporting on Indian people on Martha's Vineyard who had converted. The last chapter is on children, pious children. And there was one young man, Caleb Ohama, and he was 16 years old when he died. And he used to drive people crazy. I don't think he could go to the bathroom without the Bible under his arm. He just had to have that, like OCD, maxed out on OCD with his Bible. Which, if that's the place that his mind was in, what did this Christianity do to him? He ended up dying at age 16, and in this chapter on pious children, it seems like they all died, from age 8 to age 16, whatever. But as he was dying, he was asking to be forgiven for the state in which he was born. He wasn't talking about the state of Massachusetts. He was talking about being a Christian, a non-Christian, or in other words, a Wampanoag. So what is it when Christianity, something that's supposed to be so good and holy, can make you feel so bad about who you are that you have to be forgiven for it? Laws. Colonial laws were on the books by the 1660s. A lot of them had to do with Indians. There were sections on Indians and the land, transfer of land. My favorite one is that if an Indian wanted to sell land to a non-native, that the non-native person had to have a license. And if the non-native person did not have the license and the land transferred to him, it would default to the country. What does that mean? Depending on the year, it's going to be the colonial government, in this case, you know. I'm like, oh, cute, just one more way. There's a whole laundry list of ways that land was taken away from people. And if you take the land and you separate us from it, then it deprives us of being able to fulfill our responsibilities and who we are as a people, therefore. There was destruction of tribal leadership, purposeful undermining. Awashonks, who was the sachem of Sakonnet, which is Little Compton, Rhode Island, the last record of her is in 1685, and she was jailed. This is a sachem now. She was jailed for not informing the English that her daughter was pregnant out of wedlock. Like they needed to know that, you know. But as good a reason as any, I guess. We've talked about debt and indenture, education. There's a whole book on Caleb Chisha-Tiamak that came out, Caleb's Crossing, which I find the book very disturbing. And there's a lot of authors that I have trouble with like that. But the author at one time went to Aquinnah and was speaking, and she had the question, wasn't it just so wonderful that this Indian man could get through Harvard in 1665? I'm thinking in 1665, why would he need to go to Harvard and learn Greek and Latin? You know, it just boggled my mind. Because at the age that he would have entered college, at 18 or whatever, I don't know how old he was, but he already had his Wampanoag education. He knew his land. He knew how to find food. He knew how to keep warm. He knew how to clothe himself. He knew about ceremony and prayer. He knew, about medicine. He knew what he needed to know to be the human being that he was born into this world to be. Greek and Latin weren't going to help him do that. So why did he do it? That was one way that Native people came to grapple with the forces of colonization. Oh, maybe if we learn these things that they know, maybe we can figure out why they're doing to us what they're doing. Help us cope with that, We've already heard about reservations. that whole system, which in my mind went from, if we use Mashpee as an example, or Aquinnah, they were two of the original villages in the Wampanoag Nation, if you will, that became reservations or Indian districts that later were both incorporated in 1870 as towns. In my mind, those are just different ways of getting the land away from people, because you change your relationship to the land. In the district thing, land was allotted to families, which is a complete reversal of what it was in our traditional way, in the way that we related to and took care of the land. There was, I could go on for, another hour and a half or so.
It's your
but-
time. Oh, please go ahead. We have time.
But I think that'll get you in the ballpark of colonization. And it's not something that has stopped. It has gone on through the centuries. I keep getting emails about, oh, Mashpee's, this one was just the other day, Mashpee's land is secure. 2 years ago, whenever it was, Trump took it away. And then Biden put it back. But then someone else tried to take it away again, and now it's secure. How many times do we have to go through this? How many times? At Aquinnah, we were just talking about this the other day over there. The town of Aquinnah keeps sending us real estate tax bills, which is, it's just like, it's insulting. It's like a punch in the gut. It just wears away at you. That is colonization, just picks and picks and picks. And I'll tell you my story about the vacuum cleaner later.
I did not see that coming. All right. Tobias,
We're going to clean up right here, okay?
you have thoughts, Tobias?
Well, Linda has covered a broad spectrum here. And, it's difficult to have this conversation, and we knew this was how it was going to be when we put this day together. We knew it was going to be tough to listen to the facts about the things that happened to us because of colonization. It's loss. We were losing things constantly, fighting also constantly to remain who we were. I talked about that last night in my comments. It's one of the most difficult things that I can try to wrap my head around, that I was born not too far from here. Just going to give you a story example here. I grew up in Everett. Went to Boston all the time. I had no idea that when I was visiting with my relatives that live over that town line over in the city of Boston, that whenever the sun was going down, it was not legal for this Indian kid, eventually Indian man, to be in the city limits. Why? Because this land was always our land, but we weren't supposed to have it. We weren't supposed to be able to hold on to it. A form of loss. Linda's talking about it. These things we deal with, that the internet's listening to me now. You hear my voice. I'm telling you this truth. How do we human beings, we Wampanoag, we Mashantuckets, Pequots, we people of this land, how are we supposed to live when everything that we are trying to get through in this world is about somebody taking it away? We've managed it. That loss, yeah, it continues. They try. I was the leader of our nation. My leader today is sitting right there. We know how to fight, but we fight in a good way. We tell this story, and the ones that can hear it, great. Some of you can get it, some of you can't, but we'll keep on telling you. That's how we fight it. that's our job.
Okay. Thank you. Linda, you talked a little about education. Both of you have worked around education for a long time. We're here in an institute of higher learning, but yet education was also played a central role in colonialism and colonization. So I just wonder how you think about the role of education today, the work that you've done in education, how you avoid perpetuating a colonial mindset.
I'll go first.
Please.
You know, I've thought a lot about this, and education is something that's really, it's close to my heart. Education is my first love. I worked in our tribal education department as one of the first jobs that I had nearly 30 years ago back home when I left the city and got to go to my real home. The things that I've learned about our folks is that we got it early on. That, yeah, education could be a tool for taking away from us. But we rethought it. We understood the lesson in it was that if we decided that we would take whatever it is that they wanted to give us, learn how to use the paper, learn how to use the words on the paper, understand the laws that they're writing on that paper, then we had a new tool, another arrow in the quiver to fight them. Because then we could write down our laws, how it was supposed to be in our communities. And when they came to take our land at Gayhead, when they wanted to tell us that, well, this land is not yours, you're just residents. We rolled out paper that had been put together by the leaders of our community and all of the heads of our families and signed to let them know it is illegal, it was illegal to sell Gayhead land. And because of that, when we were informed that there was a purchase and sale agreement that was lodged in the courts at New York, our folks said, come and get it. They didn't.
Thanks.
I think for me, I feel like I came into education, if you will, kind of through the back door. Because I started my career as a museum interpreter, and people always used to think that interpreter meant like languages. I said, no, culture and history. And in my years at Plymouth, you know, you hear all kinds of questions. People come up to you and say all kinds of things and ask all kinds of questions, and they have no concept of how ignorant they might be, or how ridiculous they might sound, or how hurtful the question might be, or insulting. And over time, I came to realize that through their ignorance, they were teaching me, because now I know what they don't know, you know, and I can now begin to formulate answers for those questions, you know, so that was very useful. And over the years, I've just, you know, come to see education as a tool, far better alternative than, you know, going crazy and smacking somebody or something, you know. Thought crosses my mind every once in a while, I'll admit it, you know. But yeah, I channel that, you know. And so over the years, I've done a lot of work with teachers of all grade levels. And they've become one of my favorite groups of people to work with, because even like 20 years ago, they were not afraid to hear all this tough stuff of history. Where other people are, you know, there's still a huge fear thing. In Mashpee, for example, the education department at the tribe is developing a project to build a traditional village on a parcel of land that's on a hill that overlooks Mashpee Pond. the land area that includes this village site, includes the beach at the pond. And so many people in the town of Mashpee are like, they're going to take the beach from us. We're not going to be able to go down to they don't know. Nothing's been said about taking the beach, keeping nothing, but that fear is there, and that's that same fear. And, even if you counter people's ignorance, you still in their questions, some of the stuff that's been perpetuated in education, like some of the questions I've received at Plymouth, are not even questions but statements. I've been told I'm not Indian. Some random stranger visitor who's paid their $35 to get in the place or whatever can walk up to me and say this, or I've been told I'm not a person because I'm an Indian. And I've been told I can't be an Indian because I'm a woman. So do that math, So it's just, and I think, those statements, they come from ignorance, but they're based on fear. And what is that fear? I think we're looking it in the face, in this session today, with colonization. Because I think on some level, people know, they have some sensibility about what's happened to Native Americans. At least if the only thing they know is that the land was taken, and they don't know any of this whole other list of stuff like I named off. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to grapple with.
Thank you. Speaking of grappling with, I want to turn to the big themes of the conference, which are responsibility and repair, and just ask both of you what those words mean in this context, and particularly in the history of colonialism in New England. What are the responsibilities, and what are the opportunities for repair, if there are any?
I think one thing I always tell people is that you are responsible. Not for everything that happened in history, because obviously we weren't there. But we can't change it, but we can make sure it doesn't happen again. That is the responsibility, and that's the repair. And I think that we do that by learning about this very tough history. It just slays me when I hear, rhetoric about how America is the greatest country on earth. Well, it can't even face its own history. So it's time to put their money where their mouth is, I think, and face all this stuff that I was naming. That's what it's going to take. And I think education's a good way to do it. So.
The responsibility part is, as you said, it's facing it, hearing it, trying to understand, listening to Native voices, and not getting upset because there's this Indian dude that's talking about wanting their land back. Maybe understand what the culture of our people is, that, the most horrendous idea in a traditional sense that our ancestors could have thought to endure would be to be removed from their land, because we are it, and it is us. It's in us. So when you say that land doesn't belong to you, if you're telling an Indian person that they're separated from that, if you ever wanted a concept of hell, there it is. Because it means that you're divested, you have no place to be. Your place in the universe is gone from you when you tell me that you've taken my land. So when somebody is talking about land back, it's not some angry Indian out there saying, get off of it and go away. It's a little late for that. Not going to happen. We kind of have some sense. But it is return our connection to our place. Now, that can be give it back. We're happy to just remain what we've always been for thousands of years around here, stewards. Because we don't own it. We are it. That would be like saying that we own my cousin here. No. We just want to be connected. So the point that I'm trying to make here is maybe try to understand that's the responsibility part. The repair part is try not to get angry about hearing truth, hearing real history. Just try to be human and see the human in the people that are telling you what's hurting them.
I'd like to just add another comment if I could, because in a lot of the introductions we've heard about the place that people come from. And that's reflected in our language. And our word for land is aki. Mm-hmm. And I can't explain this like a linguist or anything, because I've only taken this particular class 3 times, but if it's like you can't use the word aki by itself, the land has to belong to somebody, known as noun possession. So I have to, an N is, if I'm going to say my, that's the prefix that would indicate my or I.
Natakim.
Yes, I'm getting there. I'm working my way down the line here. So, and I can't say nataki, my land. There's a suffix of the letter M that goes on the end of that word, natakim. That M tells you that me, in this case, and the land are one thing. Or katakim, you and the land are one thing, okay? And it's interesting because our word for leader, or chief, if you will, sankyam, it has that same M. My leader who is me, and I am my leader. The word for enemy ends in M. Because we're all one thing. Mm-hmm. You might not like some SOB, but you still are all one thing, Just gotta work that out, And it's interesting because, our language, we were fortunate to have a huge corpus of written documents in the Wampanoag language, okay, in the 17th century and into the 18th century. And getting into the mid-18th century, you began to see that M not being added on to those words, mm-hmm. Which is clearly people, but it took that long. Took a long time because that concept just didn't exist with us.
Can we get the visual back up here? Linda wanted to talk a little about one of these. Was this the slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what struck me about this is one of the things that makes us invisible, and there's a million ways that we've been made invisible through either all the things that I've named or through movies and books and, curriculum, media, you name it. We were talking about the Thanksgiving myth earlier, and it's Pilgrims and Indians, not Pilgrims as Wampanoags, as David Silverman was saying, okay? So up here we have 19th century Wampanoags, and the woman on the far left, Dorcas Honorable, Nantucket Wampanoag. And you see that mark on her right cheek? That's a brand because she was a slave. The drawing at the top is Jane Walmsley, who's in Aquinnah Wampanoag, and was mentioned in the Indian Converts book by Experience Mayhew. Simon Johnson, he was a chief at Aquinnah at one point. Abram Query, the so-called last Indian of Nantucket. It just really bothers me when people don't have names and they're just generic people. So sometimes there's names, but there's no faces because it was before cameras or whatever. And I worked on an exhibit with the Wellfleet Historical Society where we were talking about a woman named Delilah Sampson Gibbs, who circa 1820 had enough herbal knowledge and she cured a woman of breast cancer. And I was like, oh my goodness. I said, where is this story recorded? Oh, well, it's just come down in this family. And I think, if Delilah was a white woman, they'd have created neon to slap her name right up there, you know? But she's just some Indian. In spite of what she knew, and if you think about what she knew, and in 1820 the landscape was intact enough to still grow these plants, and she had that knowledge which she had gained over the course of her life. So I think of things, one little instance like that, and what's the broader context, what's the bigger story that fits into, you know, and how much we've lost, you know. I thought I had another thought, but now I can't think of it.
It'll come back.
Vacuum cleaner?
Oh, the vacuum cleaner? Are we close to time?
No, you can see it up there. We still have 10 minutes left. So.
Okay. I'll wait a couple
You want to save
minutes.
we'll save it for the end. Okay.
Do we have Q&A time, though?
Yes, so I was just going to move to audience questions.
Okay, well, then I'll do my vacuum cleaner story. Okay. And to me, this speaks of resistance. And, I mean, I read this whole laundry list of colonial processes that were imposed on Wampanoag people, not to mention other indigenous people. And a friend of mine, probably, I can't remember if it was the 80s or the 90s, but she had rented a vacuum cleaner from Rent-A-Center where you pay a weekly amount for the use of that equipment, and she'd gotten behind in the payments. So the guy called her up, and he's like, oh, Mrs. Tavares, you've gotten behind in your payments. Mm-hmm. Well, we may have to come and get the vacuum. Well, come get the vacuum. Oh, no, I'm sure we can work out. No, come get the vacuum. No, I'm sure you don't mean come get the vacuum. And this went on like a couple more times. And it might seem silly over a vacuum cleaner, but she recognized the manipulation in his attempts to sort of keep her on the payment thing with the money coming in, and she wasn't having it. She'd rather have no vacuum. You can get another vacuum, you got a broom, you can do something. She was not going to let that man manipulate her at all. And I've seen that. This one was from Mashpee, and I've seen it in other people from Mashpee. And I've come to look at that as a form of colonial resistance. You know, it's a small thing, but it's huge in terms of how you feel about yourself. You know, and it's like all this stuff happened, and it's like, now this guy's gonna bug me about this vacuum? I'm not having it. Here's a line, come get the vacuum.
One of the questions I was about to ask, you just answered. That was how colonialism manifests in the present day. It's a perfect example. Again, folks in the audience here, folks online can submit questions via the Slido app. One that came in how do we translate indigenous ways of being to a system that was created to destroy it through state and federal and local governments, schools, et cetera?
Say what?
How do we translate indigenous ways of being to these systems that were created outside of indigenous ways of being? How do you operate?
My thoughts exactly.
We're an example. The leaders that are sitting in this room are an example. Every Indian person that you've witnessed on this stage telling you about how we figure out how to navigate and we utilize the tools that are out there for everybody, but we use them for our purposes because we are still Indians. Whatever our tribe is, I probably have not, most people haven't heard me use the term Indian like this in who knows how long, because I usually don't. But the point is it's helping me make my point. We're still indigenous. We just make sure that we take what those tools are, we think about it in our way, and we keep it moving. I mean, I can't say it any different than that. I don't think that there's like some technical analysis that I can offer, for how we do it. I just know that I'm sitting here as Wampanoag Ishkitomp, as a Wampanoag man, and a Harvard graduate.
Another question I used to get at Plymouth is, well, how do you know you're Indian, or how do you remain Indian in today's world? And I mean, I don't know, everything has been done to change us from being that. But on the other hand, the only thing that I could think of sort of off the cuff at the moment with someone in front of me was that we are who we are, and in spite of what's happened, there's an essence that doesn't change. Mm-hmm. You just kind of are who you are, and you keep doing what you do. So Delilah Sampson learned about plants, and other people grew corn, and whatever they did. Some people remembered songs or dances. It just, kind of depended on their family or whatever. So, and they just keep doing.
There you go. Thanks. Another question, getting back to definitions, someone in the audience asked if you could both talk about what tribal self-determination means. I think in a general sense, but also to you specifically.
Wow. Okay, so, self-determination is, it kind of is it's explanatory right in the term right there. We understand who we are. We understand who we come from. We understand the form of government that fits us. We understand that we deserve to have a government-to-government relationship with the United States of America because we were here before it existed. We continued no matter what slings and arrows came against us. Every effort to make us not be able to say for ourselves who, what, how we are going to be. And still, we have managed to navigate that adversity. So, I guess it goes back to we just keep it moving. We do it. But, self-determination is one thing. Yes, I can show you our government documents. I help to create aspects of our modern government's institutions. But, sovereignty is the more important thing. The power that remains in every one of our tribal nations to represent who and what we are as the nation back to not just the United States of America, whatever nation we are dealing with on the globe, because, well, this is broadcast worldwide, right? Across the internet. Well, we have those relationships internationally too. And so that is the essence of what we are. That is the essence of self-determination. It's sovereignty. And we know how to wield it.
I think I would just add that a realization that took me a number of years to come to is that we have the right to be who we were created to be, period.
So we're getting down to time here, so I'll ask this one last question in self-interest here. It comes in from the audience. In light of the discussion about education, what advice would you offer Harvard about course development and partnership or collaboration with Native communities in the future?
Okay. It's real simple. Look back to your charter. If you hadn't rechartered, this institution wouldn't be here. The statement in the charter was read last night. This institution is for the education of Indian and English youth of this country. So make good with the relationship that you're supposed to have with the tribal nations, especially all of us that are from New England, all of us that are from this very land that this institution stands upon. Make it so that I don't have to say I'm the first man from my community in over 300 years that came through this place. Make it so that I can talk about the parade of my people that are coming through this institution and getting that paper that you're so happy to get at the end of a very grueling experience, a very expensive experience, and make it so that they can come back to us and do what they always intended to do, and that's uphold the nation. But it starts with the relationship between this institution and all the tribal nations that are sitting in this room. Enough said.
Hey, we're up on time, so please join me one last time in thanking Tobias Vanderhoop and the Coombs for sharing all their knowledge and insights.
Give me a hug.